In this video, I'm going to be reviewing the Papermind Cosmo Airlight hardcover notebook. I'll go over the specs, I'll do a paper test, and I'll tell you what I like and don't like about this notebook coming up. Blake here with Blake's Broadcast. On this channel, I review fountain pens, paper, and ink, and as always, I put links in the show notes in the description below. And if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button, it really helps out my channel. Alright, let's get on with the review. So this is the Papermind Cosmo Airlight hardcover notebook. This is one of my newest notebooks. I released it earlier this month along with a Passe hardcover notebook. Feature-wise, very similar to that Passe notebook. In fact, I'll put a link to that review up in the corner so you guys can see that. But basically, the features are the same. The paper is really the only thing that's different. Now, it comes in this really nice Japanese light gray linen, and then we also have a navy blue linen. The other difference is that the navy one is blank, the gray one is ruled, 7mm rule. Now, just quickly going through the features, we have Cosmo Airlight paper. This is the 83 GSM version. I'll talk a little bit about why I chose that version. Stitched lay flat binding. So this is a really flexible, really easy going notebook, very comfortable to use. It's $30, which I think is a very good price for the quality of the construction with the really nice linen hardcover, stitch binding. We also have a pink blotter sheet, which is something that you will want to use with coated papers like Cosmo Airlight, and I'll do a demonstration of that in a little bit. Again, Japanese linen hardcover. We have a French joint here just to help the book open, 11 signatures, and 176 pages. We also have a bookmark here. We have a navy blue colored woven bookmark. Tested a bunch of these. This one really ended up being the best performing. Okay, so let's take off the belly band here. Now on the back, we have a Papermind silver foil logo made in Japan. Okay, so we have a pink blotter sheet. Now, in terms of the ruling, 7mm rule. This is the same rule that I have on my Mitsubishi bank paper notebooks. This is a size that really works well for me, and it seems like most people really like this 7mm size. It's a light gray, it's not a thick line, so it really doesn't get in the way of your writing. It's just helpful as kind of a light guide. Okay, so for the paper test, I'm actually using one of my prototypes. I've really tried to beat this thing up, so it does look a little bit shabby, but I used this a lot to make sure everything was right before we really put these things into production. So looking at the paper test here, we have the Pilot Parallel, 6mm, all of these, the face of this just looks really good, really smooth. That micro coating on the surface really holds on to the ink. There's no feathering or anything like that. Even the texture of the paper doesn't really come through. Now, going to the back, looking at the fountain pens, there is no bleed through. Now, there are a couple of spots here with these Pilot Parallel pens where you see like one dot and another dot. That's the nib digging into the paper and damaging that micro-coated surface. In my testing and using Pilot Parallel pens with a lot of testing, this is actually not that normal to see. I'm not 100% sure why we're seeing that here. Just as a comparison, this is done with that same 6mm Pilot Parallel pen. We can just see some of the sheening and shading, shimmering with this. But if you look, there is none of those dots, no bleed through at all. And again, here, good sheening, but zero bleed through. So I'm not 100% sure what happened. It's not normal. But at any rate, look at how good everything else is. All of the other fountain pens, I mean, really, like the double pass that I did with this 6mm pen, nothing. Everything here looks super clean. The Troublemaker pens didn't really cause any problems. We got the Staedtler Lumocolor permanent marker, that bleeds on pretty much everything. The Sharpie usually comes through, nothing came through here. Pilot Oil Drawing Pen, that one usually doesn't work, or usually bleeds through, nothing. The Copic Sketch, we can see just a tiny bit trying to come through, but it's not fully penetrating the side, and there's nothing on the other sheet over here. So this is, in my opinion, really excellent performance. it's very hard to make this paper bleed. You know, just using this pen, I'm just curious to see if we can recreate that. The other thing I want to show you maybe is fingerprints sometimes affect or can affect coated papers. See, look, you can see my fingerprint there. Just something to be aware of. I mean, that's me really trying to, I'll use a different finger here, smudge that paper almost. So there's something to be aware of with coated papers, but if you're a fountain pen user and you like Tomoe River, or even Rodeo, which is another coated fountain pen friendly paper, you have to be careful with fingerprints. You know, just briefly touching the paper won't really cause any issues, but if you really are smudging your finger on there, it can become a problem. Now, let's just see, is anything coming through? Nope. Well, while we're waiting, I guess we can talk a little bit about the paper weight. So with this paper, Cosmo Air Light, there's a 70 something GSM version and a 92 GSM version, I want to say. I've tried both of those in testing. The 70, it just felt too light to me. You get more show through with it. It didn't really add a lot by going lighter. Now going heavier, you get a little bit less show through, really not noticeable. I mean, the show through on this is already pretty minimal. You'll be able to write on both sides. Looking here, nothing's coming through, even when I'm trying to scratch that. So I don't know what to say other than just think that these are some kind of fluke here. It's still drying. Now, we can just go to a page here and I'll show you how to use the pink blotter sheet. We can use a pretty wet pen like this Italic Mont Blanc. So right now this is wet. You can see that's wet. Now to use this, carefully lay it down without moving it, or sliding it around I mean, and it will pick up the excess ink. You can use both sides of these, and they do last quite a long time. I use a rocking blotter on my desk. These, of course, are not portable like this, which is cut to fit, you know, so that it's slightly smaller than the book block, and that just prevents it from getting bumped or whatever. But you can use both sides, and these will last a very long time. I've had this on my desk for, I want to say 2 months with this sheet, and I still don't need to change it. These things, this blotter paper absorbs ink for quite a long time. So you should be able to get through, I would think, probably the whole notebook without needing more blotter sheets. Now, in terms of dry time, I find that with most pens, it's around, or fountain pens rather, assuming you don't go too wet and wide, it's around 25 seconds, which is on the longer side. Now, it's comparable to Tomoe River. So just to compare it to some Tomoe River, this is the old 52 GSM Tomoe River. This is the cream color, but it's basically the best version of Tomoe River that we have, or that we've gotten anyway. And this paper, I would say in terms of dry times, it's very similar to the Cosmo Air Light. The Tomoe River has less of an issue with line spreading. So, for instance, if we use this same pen, this is a fine Mont Blanc 149, and we make a line, and I make a line here. This line gets a little bit wider, whereas this on the Tomoe River tends to stay its normal width. Let's try it with a fatter pen real quick. This is a, bigger italic. And I think we can see that on the Cosmo Air Light, it just looks maybe just a touch thicker. But the trade-off here is, and I'm gonna just blot these really quick so I don't make a mess. The trade-off here is there's tons and tons of ghosting with Tomoe River, and there's more bleeding, and there's more normal bleeding with fountain pen use. You can see a lot more spots where it's really coming all the way through the Pilot Parallel pen. You can also see it coming through in some of the rollerball and gel pens, Octo Fude Ball, Energel, and then of course all the Troublemaker pens sort of failed like a regular paper where they came all the way through. So there are some pros and cons here between Tomoe River and Cosmo Air Light, but for pure performance, non-bleeding, being able to write on both sides of the sheet, this is so much nicer. The texture is also, I think, more pleasant. There's a nice feedback from the microcoating on this Cosmo Air Light that's really, I think, enjoyable and unique. Now the Tomoe River is very, I want to say it's very standard feeling. It's not super smooth. There's not a ton of texture there either. It's very middle ground. You know, if you like writing on block rhodia, this isn't going to feel that much different than that. The paper is crinklier, but the surface of it is just very plain. There's not a lot there. And that is not necessarily a dig against this paper. This is obviously one of the most beloved fountain pen friendly papers for a reason. It just has a pretty normal feeling surface, whereas this feels more like a textured paper, which is really nice to write on. However, the lines don't look like it's being written on with a textured paper. The lines are so smooth. There's no raggedness, there's no texture of the paper showing through like you do see on Mitsubishi bank paper, which is part of the charm of Mitsubishi bank paper or any natural uncoated paper. But this, you kind of get the perfection of a coated paper with the feel of an uncoated paper. So I really, really like that about this. For shading and sheening, this thing is pretty much the ultimate shading and sheening paper. In my experience, this is better than Tomoe River. It doesn't absorb into the paper as much as it does Tomoe River, so we have bigger pools. There's more just overall sheening and shading. I do believe that for sheening and shading, this is pretty much the best paper you can buy. So what are my pros and cons for the Papermind Cosmo Air Light hardcover notebook? Well, of course, I love this notebook because I designed it, but the reasons to buy this are the build quality and the Cosmo Air Light paper. So we did a really nice high quality Japanese linen hardcover, comes in this nice gray color, and we also have a blue. The binding stitched, and it's very high quality. It lays very flat. Doesn't matter where you turn in this, it's really, really flexible. Blotter sheet and bookmark, everything you need here, nothing you don't. The paper Cosmo Air Light is, I think, probably the best paper for sheening and shading there is. I do think it looks better, ink looks better on this page than Tomoe River and Toro Next paper. I think the color reproduction, which is what this paper was designed for, is really excellent. And that micro-coated surface, it doesn't absorb the ink, but it like holds onto it. So you get really the best sheening and shading that I've seen of any paper. So if you like that, you like those kind of inks, this is a really, really good choice. In terms of cons, the flip side of that coating is that it's slower to dry. It takes between 20 and 25 seconds to dry, which is a long time. And for me, the way that I like to use notebooks, that means you have to blot it. I've included a blotter sheet with this notebook, so you don't really have to worry about making a mess. When you close the book or turn the page, you'll be able to get any of that ink that hasn't dried yet off of the page. Other cons, well, we only have two colors at the moment, and we only have two sheet styles, 7mm rule and blank. I'd like to do more of those in the future. We definitely want to do a grid and possibly dot grid. And of course, I want to do other colors for the cover. Let me know what you guys would want. That is pretty much it. Do you guys have this notebook? Do you like this notebook? Please let me know what you think of it in the comments. And if you like this video, please hit that like button. And if you want to see more fountain pen, paper, and ink videos, please hit that subscribe button. Thank you guys so much, and until next time.